Ready, Matt?
Then I am.
Hey, it said to your frame rate to 30.
Hmm?
The computer's changed your frame rate to 30.
We can't.
It says corrected frame rate is incorrect. Like it's streaming, but it says
It's fine.
victory. It's not gonna work very well.
No, it's not.
Okay, as long as we're
This song is
you know what
forever.
we should have done?
just you can just
How long is this song?
Converted it.
I don't know. I can't hear it.
It just keeps going.
All right, can we get this going? Can we just interrupt the song?
Yeah.
Give us a countdown, Curtis.
Do it.
Oh, here we go. Ready, Matt? And you're on.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to KnightChat, bringing you a different bit of a look here from WTSC Radio. Got my good pal, Brandon Warner, Dan Devins, Jake McNamara right here with me. Through some introductions, you should know me, Matt Knickie, the color commentator here for the women's and men's college hockey teams.
Brandon Warner, along here with, of course, my always faithful broadcasting partner, Matt Knickie, play-by-play for WCKN. Proud to be here with WTSC. Thankful that we can cross over the studio here and get this going.
I'm Jake McNamara here. I'm the intramural sports manager for the Clarkson Pep Band, so I'm always a face you can see at the arena. They're down playing with the band or up in the press box with these guys trying to get some work done.
You guys have an intramural sports manager for the Pep Band?
Yes, we do.
All right. Well, I'm Dan Devins. I am the executive producer at the WCKN studios for our hockey broadcasts. I am also the assistant manager, and I love hockey.
I think we all have that going for us. We all love hockey quite a bit, and I think that's why we're all here. Hopefully going to be able to bring you guys some pretty good talk. Just a little bit of, we've done KnightChat in the past. It was mostly on the TV station, but now in radio station, streaming live out to YouTube, with the technology we got. Hopefully we can bring you something that's pretty interesting to start. I guess we should look around the ECAC. We have to do that on the broadcast. Might as well do it here as well, give you an update where the men's and the women's teams lie, and then maybe a little preview of some of the other matchups. Save some of the Clarkson games for later on in the show.
Yeah, and of course, we saw at home, of course, last weekend, the winning a series. Of course, though, we'll cover the men first. Around the ECAC, taking a look at last weekend's scores. Yale and Harvard had a pretty good one, Matt, down at Madison Square Garden. 5-1 Yale was able to come away, and that's scary because the Bulldogs come to town this weekend, defending national champions, to take on the Golden Knights. Of course, Colgate was ever able to steal one away from another ranked opponent at UVM, and Clarkson, their best showing of the season with that 4-0 loss on Saturday to Merrimack, and QPEC able to come away with a victory there over RPI after a pretty big win for them in their program on Friday night over a very good Union team. And Boston College and Brown tied up, which is also scary. Boston College, very good team, and Brown coming in this weekend as well, traveling with Yale. And Dartmouth, New Hampshire played a pretty good game in Manchester, New Hampshire, and New Hampshire came away victorious. Union and Princeton, Union came away 3-0 over Princeton, but really the ECAC's been tough, Matt, and if we look at the standings, you want to run us through those?
Well, you look right at the standings, and you see Clarkson's up there towards the top, but sort of a disappointing showing there. If you look at Quinnipiac at the top, they've been probably the top team for most of the year last year. They're so good this year coming in with those high expectations. They didn't lose all that much. They lost their goaltender, Eric Hartzell. They got guys to replace him, and really Quinnipiac starts with their offense. Their offense has been great, and it's really helped stay at the top of the ECAC throughout the entire year.
And, Jake, you've been with the team and seen more games than Matt and I have, of course, being here calling the women's games when the men are on the road. But you were at that game against Yale. The men falling to Yale, of course, it's very hard to play Yale in their own arena. But what are some things you noticed kind of that Yale was able to do to really kind of shut down the Knights?
Well, overall, I wasn't really impressed with the quality of play by either team that night. Unfortunately, Yale just came out on top on the, I think, the greater of two less than stellar showing. The Knights, they really didn't move like they had in the past, and I showed them. I was really impressed over this year, especially coming back from last year. Just how well they moved moved across the ice. Just them, clean passes and a lot of opportunities. Not necessarily all of them made, but just making a lot of them and take advantage on some of them. And they didn't do that as well as they usually had this weekend. So yeah.
And then, of course, if we kick it over to the west side, Matt, we see Cornell kind of heading out the standings there. No surprise. Big Red, tough as always in the ECAC, and Quinnipiac up there as well on the women's side. Harvard right behind them in third, and Clarkson, of course, sitting in fourth place, a couple games behind some of the other teams that have played a lot of good games. Cornell, though, no losses in EAC play. It's scary to see what Cornell's doing. I know the women have them coming up here in a bit. And I know, Matt, you've seen Dan, you've seen a couple more games on the women's side. You, with your sister playing at Union, really have a little bit more perspective. I know you've been down for our games there, but
Yeah, I think that Cornell obviously is I'm pretty sure gonna take the ECAC this year. They're just, outstanding. Even with having the few players on the Olympic teams that they do, but I think that going into this weekend, it's Yale and Brown. They're not too hard of an opponent. They're both, believe sitting at the bottom of the ECAC right now. So it should be an interesting weekend. Hopefully we can bring out points and move up in the standings and try and make the gap between us and Cornell a little shorter.
And it always seems like since we've been here, Clarkson's really been chasing Cornell on the women's side. Just every year we've been here, it seems like we're just a few points behind them. Seems really that Cornell goes out and it seems they just get those 1 or 2 extra victories at some point during the middle of the season right now, where maybe Clarkson falters during a weekend. But the Knights really got to come out and they got to put on the gas. Right now you're really trying to chase Cornell. They're a tough team to try to catch up with, especially because they have scoring, they have defense, they have such great players. Brianne Jenner, probably the best player in the country that we've seen. She's always going to be scoring for that Cornell team. You got to hope they falter, because if you falter, Cornell's not going to slow up. And it's got to be important trying to eye up that matchup now later in the year with the Knights and the Big Red. That's going to be a really crucial game, not just for ECAC standings, but for the national standings, where right now Cornell sits at third, behind Minnesota, who's still sweeping first place votes, and Wisconsin. But the Knights jump up to 5 in front of Harvard after 2 really great games where they came away with huge victories. Erica Howe getting the shutout in both of those games, able to come away with ECAC for the week, added to her shutout total. Now, I think up to 10 on the year. So, or 9, excuse me. So almost double-digit shutouts for Erica Howe. She's been excellent this year. Probably one of the best goalies in the country. Probably one of the best players that's really helping push this Knights team, and she's going to be really important in the second half of the season.
And yeah, you did mention, Matt, that Cornell really they haven't made their trip up here to Cheel quite yet. We saw Harvard a little bit earlier in the year. The ladies couldn't come away with a victory against the Crimson when the Crimson came in. Still, of course, 2 games to play there. They still have to go on the road to Harvard and Dartmouth. They were able to kind of overcome that victory with Dartmouth. But one thing to take note of as they go on the road this weekend, when Brown was here, we thought they would have a pretty easy victory, able to kind of squeak past that Brown team. And they worked very hard that game and were just able to pull out a 1-1 tie. And it was insane to kind of see the women play like that. And I'm sure Matt and Shannon DeRoche kind of got on them for their play that game. But they seem a little bit flat-footed. And I'm sure the ladies are going to be pushing here in this second stretch of the ECAC games, kind of make that final surge, because it's easy in the middle of the season here to get lackadaisical and really not focus on the little things like crashing the net and putting back chance opportunities.
Well, we've seen it sort of be a problem for the Knights. They come out times at the beginning of games and they do look a little flat-footed, especially some of those Saturday matchups. And that was that Brown game after a really tough Harvard loss that they weren't able to get past Emirates Mashmeyer, came away with the shutout. The Knights just weren't able to come out the way they wanted. They eventually saw some really good action in the second and the third periods. But by that point, Brown had sort of gotten into a zone, and they were ready to play when the Knights went. We know Clarkson's a very good team, on the women's side especially. They've always very good since we've been here in the top 10 pretty much consistently. But sometimes have a tendency of coming out a little bit slow, coming out a little bit flat-footed, and it tends to hurt them later on in games when they need that one more extra chance when the other team then is able to get some control. So really for the Knights, I think coming out into the second half of the season, it's going to be all about getting up for that second game of the 2-game series, whether it's, at home or on the road. Sometimes the Knights have problems showing up for the games. But if they can, I don't think anyone in the country would tell you the Knights don't have a chance of playing and beating any team in the country with the talent they have here. The scoring depth especially, which I think in the second half of the season should really come up and step up big for the Knights.
And Matt, we were talking about Erica Howe. Let's go back to that. If you look down the USCHO statistics as far as their page goes, we kind of jump into a period. We'll talk about stats for a little. Erica Howe is leading the country, #1 goaltender according to the USCHO website here. She, of course, in order to be qualified, you need to be playing 33% of your minutes, and it's fair to say she's played just about every game. We've seen Jenna Boss coming in a few times, but really Erica Howe has been the backbone of the defense. She's played phenomenal in her 22 games, 16-4-2 record. But then if you look a little bit farther down the list, you'll see number 3, Emrys Mashmeyer, the sophomore from Harvard. Number 4 is Chelsea Lake from Quinnipiac. And really, there's just been top goaltending in the ECC so far. We saw Callie Bilodeau already this year coming in from Syracuse. She's up in the Shelby Amsley Beasley from North Dakota, if you recognize her. She came building. She played very well here. And really, the Knights really going to have a tough time in this ECAC schedule coming up. There's a lot of quality goaltenders, but knowing that you have the best country between the pipes for you is a little bit of a boost, I'd say. Knowing that, if you get beat on a play, usually the goaltender's going to be there for your back.
And Erica Howe has certainly been there, but I think you just reading off the names of some of the players, some of those goaltenders that the Knights have faced so far this year, I think it really bodes well for them coming into the second half of the ECAC schedule, because they went and they played teams like Mercyhurst in North Dakota, and granted they weren't able to come out with the 4-point sweep, or even in the Mercyhurst they couldn't come away with, or North Dakota, they couldn't come away with a victory, a loss, and a tie. But you look at experience you get from playing those really top caliber teams, and we saw it last year when Knights played North Dakota and Mercyhurst as well, but on the road. It really is going to help later on in that season when you're in that grind of ECAC games, knowing we play teams like North Dakota that are probably better than some of the other teams in the ECAC schedule. So even if we weren't able to do as well against North Dakota, that experience against girls that are just as good, if not better than you, that's going to help down the stretch. It's going to give you some confidence knowing we've played all these really good teams and we've been able to stick with them. We haven't seen Clarkson in a game this year really be completely outplayed. They've been in every single game they've played. It's just, what do they play up to their potential? And when they do, we've seen them do some really good things. We saw them go and play Quinnipiac at home at a time when Quinnipiac hadn't lost a game at home all season, and go and shut them out. So this Knights team, when they play up to their potential, if they can get on a little bit of a roll, and I think we're starting to see that with 5 straight wins, if you include that win against McGill, they've been on a roll going back even to the end of last semester. Now, if they can continue that into the real thick of this ECAC schedule, it's going to be hard to catch Cornell. But they certainly have a shot if they can continue to lean on their goaltender, Erica Howe, and it really comes all back to her and how she continues to play in the pipes.
And really, they have had a pretty stingy defense. If you look through the stats a little bit more, let the stats kind of tell the story. Clarkson, well, 1.05 goals against average per game, really stellar defense. And then you see, as far as goaltending leaders, Erica Howe not only leading the nation in minutes, but leading the nation in shutouts with 9. The closest one is Chelsea Layden from Quinnipiac with 6. So really, she's just kind of blowing everybody out of the water. And of course, Emrys Mashmeyer has of her own, and she leads the nation in save percentage, stopping about 6% of the shots she sees, which is the reason why, as far as team defense, Harvard leads the nation right now. So it's going to be tough for the Knights to kind of come out. It's going to be a defensive-oriented game when they go down to take on Harvard down in Boston. But of course, when Cornell comes to town, Cornell not the best as far as team defense goes. Is still doing very well, 11th in the country if you look here, 2.12 goals against average per game for the Big Red. But the bigger story for Cornell is their team offense. They're averaging right around 4 goals a game, and Clarkson not too far behind at 3.68. You have to wonder if they're going to be able to play defense and kind of slow down that Cornell offense. And if the Knights' potent offense can get something started against a Cornell defense, which hasn't been what we've seen in the past few years from Cornell. Usually a defensive-heavy team, especially men's side, really don't allow very much going on, but then also do some fantastic things on the offensive side as well.
Well, I think Cornell, obviously, they have Brianne Jenner, who's a very good player, and we saw them. Daryl Johnston was a player that um, they got unfortunately graduated, but Cornell, a very good team in the ECAC. They all recruit well, which is why they've been able to be so good throughout their time here. And I just think Clarkson's been able to recruit well as well. And I think you can see some of the players that Clarkson has brought in have been in a response to some of those big players that Cornell gets. A player like Shannon McCauley, who's been very effective against Cornell because she can use her size against some of those better defense down low in the corners. And I think that really, Clarkson now went from trying to get the best players to trying to recruit a team that's going to beat the best players. And I think they've done a very good job, Shannon and Matt Oshers have, to really recruit a very good team that can really compete with Cornell in this EAC, because that's going to be the team you're going to need to beat. It's going to be Cornell almost every year. They're going to be towards the top, even if, in a year here when Brianne Jenner leaves, so those other players leave. Cornell's always got players waiting in the wings. You can also see it's starting to happen here with Clarkson. They've got Kaylee Mercer coming in, only a freshman after her year of eligibility. You're looking at these young players like Shannon McCall after, and we talk about the Knights, a very senior-laden team, Rattray and Kaylee Mercer and, all these other players that are all seniors, Nisbet, Steiner, and including the goaltender Erica Howe. Clarkson's been doing a very good job of bringing in young talent to not just say, oh, we made a push for a few years in the ECAC. Clarkson's looking for some long-term success here in conference.
And, of course, we can't talk stats without talking Jamie Lee Rattray. She's been phenomenal, leading scorer for the Knights. And the closest one behind her so far has been Carly Mercer, and Erin Ambrose really skating out there with her as well. But Rattray, if you look down the stat sheet here, Matt, 22 games, 17 goals, 16 assists, 33 points, and she's chasing history this weekend. We thought she might be able to do it last Saturday against St. Lawrence. Really just a couple points shy of that all-time scoring lead for Clarkson. So really a phenomenal player, and it's been a privilege to watch her for the past 2 years and see her put together some phenomenal time here in her senior season as well. I'm pretty sure she's going to be able to find those last 2 points this season. By the way, she's been playing in the times she's seen on the power play and the penalty kill. She's done remarkable things.
Well, I think when you look around at the best teams that are out there, you have to have that one play that you sort of center your offense around. And for her first couple of years, it was primarily just offense for Jamie Lee Rattray. But now that we've seen her develop a little bit into a bit of a more two-way player, which is a little scary to think about considering how great she is on the offensive side, she's really developed a good game on the wing, along the boards, getting that puck out. She's very good at that, using her speed and her skill. We've seen her on more than one occasion where some girls have some problems. That puck comes bouncing around the boards. She's been able to knock it out of midair and make sure it gets out of the zone. We've seen her benefit with a couple of empty net goals from that on the power play. She's been excellent as always, but really also even on the penalty kill, she's stepped up big. She's played big minutes. She's taken pucks to the shins for the team. And you look at a lot of the best players out there. Shelby Nisbet does that as well, really effectively. Carly Mercer is one of the best penalty killers probably in the nation because she has speed, some size. She has a nice range with her stick. She does a great job of taking away passing lanes. And I think that's really the Knights' strength. Not only having players that can score, but players that can play in both ends. And I think over their careers here, we've seen Rattray and Mercer and also Shelby Nisbet really develop into some really important two-way players.
Definitely, and just want to remind everyone here. Pilot out here for KnightChat at WTSC. It's so generous to let a couple guys from WCK kind of come over, doing a simulcast, streaming live on the web. We'll be going out on YouTube as well as on WCKN here in the next few days once we get everything recorded and running. Talking all things Clarkson hockey here at the moment. I'm Brandon with Matt Kanicki and Jake McNamara. Of course, Dan Devins had to step out for a little bit. He should be back in a little while. Really, right now, focusing on the women's team, they've been pretty well. And I just want to take a second while we're looking at stats here, Matt. If you look down the women's statistics, as far as the Clarkson Athletics website is concerned, and you click on that plus-minus column, it's incredible to see the plus-minus of some of these girls, have put together for the season. Of course, as we're going to wait for our technology to load up here. Looking through the individual stats, but of course, leading the plus minus on the team, plus 30. That's an incredible number, Matt. Plus 30 is Aaron Burrows. She, of course, we know she plays a lot of ice time, but then if you scroll down to the bottom here, usually you expect a roster to have one person at 0 or even minuses, and the women don't have that. Everybody's plus 3 or better, which is it's crazy to think about that you have defensemen back there that have been at least for 3 goals, and it says a testament to how well Knights are playing.
And I think it really it continues the point I was making about team being great, not just offensively, but this is a great two-way team. This team can play offense and defense with any team in the country. I think Clarkson over the years has sort of gotten a little bit of, they're a defense-heavy team, but I think you can see right there that really proves not only can this team play some really great defense. We have Erica Howe, Vanessa Plant, you got Erin Ambrose back there, all the other players, but this is a team that can score, and they're going to score a lot. One of the higher scoring teams in the nation, actually. And I think Clarkson gets a bit of a bad rap about that, not just because it's sort of been how it's been in the past, but the player that really, other than Jamie Lee Rattray or Carly Mercer, that jumps out on paper is Erica Howe, because she's got those shutouts. She's got the great numbers. She's phenomenal goals against, save percentage, every little detail you could ever want for a goaltender. She's got all the stats to back it up. But I think this Knights team is very underrated offensively, and I think it's not just the top players. I know I've talked about this a lot. It's the depth. It's always about, the best teams. When, a great example is back to like the 2005-06 seasons when Alex Ovechkin's in the NHL by himself with the Capitals. Cap weren't a very good team. They just weren't until Backstrom gets there, Semin gets there. You get these other players. You have to have some supporting cast. It's great if you get a player like Jamie Lee Rattray that can go out and score a goal a game or 2 assists a game. But if she's the only one out there that's scoring or setting people up, you're not going to be successful. And I think Clarkson's done a good job of finding a mix of that upper echelon talent and then some of, not the lower echelon, but some of those mid-level players, and they've turned them into pretty good, almost stars in this ECAC. One player is Vanessa Gagnon, who I really think is one of the best players on the team, not just because offense and defense and penalty kill face-offs. You can talk about that all. But she plays such a crucial role as leader for the Knights, and she does everything right. You never see Vanessa Gagnon doing things wrong on the ice. And I think, when that's your second, times even third line center, you're going, wow, we got some really great depth scoring. Vanessa Gagnon could go to a lot of colleges and be the player for their team, but she's here, and she's almost sometimes lost in the fray of the higher-name players. And I think that's really what makes Clarkson such a good team and so competitive right now in the ECA, is that they have Christine Lamberts, they've got Shelby Nisbets, they've got contributions from their freshmen. Genevieve has been playing really well for most of the season, scoring some pretty crucial goals. And right now, Clarkson's still looking for that all to click a little bit. And I think there's been some line changes, and I think that's what Shannon Manthroshers are looking for. I think if they continue to just roll some of these lines, you're going to get your scoring. Right now is not the time to be good. About a week before the playoffs start, that's when you want to be good. And I think the Knights are trying to build towards that right now.
And Matt, let's take a little bit of time. We'll transition over to the men. You mentioned the women still trying to click a little bit. It seemed like the men, everybody thought it would take them, 3/4, halfway through the season before they would start clicking. And they came out, started the season pretty well. They sit at third in the ECAC with a couple in hand over Union and Quinnipiac, the two teams they're trailing. But they came out with all guns blazing in Niagara, able to come away with 2 victories. I mean, of course, a shutout for the freshman minder in his first game in his collegiate career. And the Knights have been turning heads all season. The men's team, of course, they will be in town this weekend to take on the Yale Bulldogs and Mount Bears. The defending national champions will be here. I'm excited to call a game, knowing that a lot of the guys on the ice have hoisted that national championship trophy. I think it'll be a good atmosphere tomorrow night, and it also should be a fantastic game.
Well, anytime you get a team like Yale to come in, the defending national champions, And same can also be said for Quinnipiac. Now, while they didn't win, they made it there. It was Yale Quinnipiac. It was a heck of a good matchup. And, I mean, it's going to tell you how the Knights do here against Yale. Looking forward to the rest of the ECAC schedule, including their matchups with Quinnipiac, RPI, some of those better teams at ECAC. Right now, Yale and Quinnipiac, those are your marking sticks right now if you're the Knights. You're going to get a really good look at how good you are right now if you're Yale. Against Yale, you're going to see how good this team is. We got a little bit of it against UMass Lowell. It's a really tough schedule to try to go right after break, 2 games, Mount Lowell, and then to go to Lowell again on a pretty long road trip and try to come away with victories. Now, it was a disappointing little stretch for the Knights, but they turned it around with a good performance against Merrimack, where they were able to come away with 1-goal victory. And then, unfortunately, a disappointing performance against Merrimack on that Saturday night game. But I think the Knights can use this game against Yale to really mark where they are in the standings. And I think, depending on how they come out, the emotion that's obviously going to be in the building with the defending national champions, it's going to be a really interesting first probably 5 to 10 minutes to see what that game is going to look like.
Yeah, I'm definitely excited for the games this weekend. I actually had the good fortune to go down to the UMass Lowell games, and while obviously not walking away with the victory for them, they did see a lot of good things out of the night. A lot of good energy, good activity, which just didn't end up working out for them. But you saw a little bit of that, I think, near the end of the Merrimack game. Maybe going out a little slow, but eventually coming up with the goal at the end. And like I think you were saying earlier, this way through the season, you get a little maybe not complacent, but a little used to your own arena. So maybe not come up with that fire. But going to an away team, I think that's just a little bit of adrenaline of maybe an unfamiliar arena. Especially one of the reasons I'm really looking forward to not this weekend, but next weekend is the men traveling, I believe, to Cornell. So that's definitely going to be a nice matchup. So.
And Matt, we talked about how the Knights put together a pretty stellar showing the first night against Merrimack, and then they just couldn't get the job done Saturday night. If you look at the stats, of course, I'm a stats guy myself. I think numbers can say a lot about the game. Rasmus Turonen, that was the guy they saw in net for Merrimack. He's doing great things for the Warriors. Number 4 in the country right now as far as goals against, and his save percentage number is up there, number 8 as far as save percentage go. He's a hot goaltender coming in, and when you're a team playing at home, you've had a little bit of a struggle at the start of the second semester, and a red-hot goaltender from Hockey East comes in, and you're able to get a victory Friday night. It's hard to put 2 solid games against a hot goaltender together, and he was just able to overcome the Knights on that Saturday night game, and Knights had opportunities, and Turonen stood on his head and said no.
Well, I think if anyone who was at that game would try to tell you that the Knights didn't have opportunities, they're lying. That game was riddled opportunities for the Knights, and you want to get on the team a little bit about not capitalizing on their opportunities, but boy, did they put some great opportunities towards that net, and Conan just made some outstanding saves. There's some, I'm still not sure how he made some of those saves, some really outstanding movement across the crease, which is so hard for some of the goaltenders, especially in college hockey. The game has gotten so much faster as in the NHL and so on. But Turonen was so good at the Saturday night game that you almost don't want to blame them for that loss. They certainly put some opportunities at net. You'd like to see them capitalize, but boy, when you get a goaltender that was as good as he was that night, it's really hard to put one past him. And unfortunately, the Knights really couldn't do it. And it's not like the Knights played terribly. They came out a little slow, which I didn't think helped their cause. But it was certainly not the worst game we've ever seen Clarkson play. And I think it's really the story of the start of the season for Clarkson. They've been in every game they played. There hasn't been, a real blowout victory where it's like, wow, we really saw the Knights get outplayed. Sure, at the beginning of that game, the Knights were outplayed quite a bit by Merrimack, but in that latter half of the second and the third, the Knights they played some darn good hockey. They were all over Merrimack. They were putting chances on net, and Turonen and you can see he's got great numbers. The one number that really shocks you more than anything is that he was only 3-4-3 coming into that game. Only had his 4th win in the whole season there against the Knights. He's not getting the scoring, but you could see if Merrimack gets scoring like they do, even if he only gives up 1, maybe 2 a game, and they can get 3, they're going to win a lot of hockey games. Merrimack's a team to watch out for. I think if they can get some of their score going, they could be a pretty dominant team in Hockey East. It looks like they found a good goaltender. They've got some very good defense. Now they just need to find some scoring. If they can do that, they know their goaltender is going to keep them in some games.
And of course, Clarkson, I mean, some people could argue that the officiating pushed that one in favor of Merrick on Saturday. I would have to be one to disagree with that. The Knights couldn't do anything back then on the power play. Granted, Turonen was there, but penalties have been a struggle so far this season for the Knights, Matt. Looking down, 6.16 minutes, or penalties per game, not penalty minutes, a couple more minutes that on average, and as they have right around 6 minutes. And that's something, if you're Casey Jones, that gives you nerves at night. Seeing 16 minutes a game, your guys in the box. And one big thing that we saw in that Saturday game, Alex Boak, late in the game, got a penalty for the face mask. A.J. Fawson had already gotten one. The referees weren't going to let anything slide. Fawson had the 5-minute major and the game misconduct, and Boak got 5 minutes, and then he gets a game disqualification, so he won't play the national champions at home. But penalties continue to riddle the Knights.
And I think special teams has certainly been a problem for Clarkson. In some of these close games, that's where it's been. They've either made or broken the Knights. And you look at all the 1-goal games that they've played, it's been a lot of them. There's been a lot of really close games in this season for the Knights. It's been, they've been playing 1-goal games the whole year. And at the beginning of the season, they came away with quite a few victories from those 1-goal games. But you can't live and die by the sword like that. There's been some times this year on the power play where the Knights have had some opportunities to maybe make it a 2-goal game, sometimes even 3, and they haven't capitalized on that. And I think that's going to be a big focus for the men's going forward, and for the women's team for that matter. When you get your power play goal, especially in college hockey, especially against a hot goaltender like we saw in Turonen, you're going to have to, you got to capitalize on your power play opportunities. And it was almost, I sounded like a broken record, I think, on Saturday night going, all right, now the Knights have to capitalize on the power play. And they didn't. Then it was, all right, here's another chance. You have to capitalize on the power play. And while the Knights were continuing to get good opportunities, just the ability to put one past Turonen, a lot of credit to him, but, for the Knights, they got to come up. They got to show up on the power play as well. And I think if they can, we know the defense is good enough. We know they got 2, maybe even 3 really goaltenders. It's got to be starting on the power play. It's so crucial. Saw Cornell, who's been a little bit disappointing this year in terms of ECAC matchup. They came in, and they were only in that game with Clarkson because they could get power play goals. And it was really important for them, and they did a great job of capitalizing on their opportunities. And if the Knights want to continue to move on and prove they're going to be in the top 10, when it comes to the power play, they have to be better than what they've been so far.
We'd like to take this time, though, to remind you you're listening to 91.1 WTSC, The Source. This is Clarkson University. Brandon Warner with Matt Kanicki and Jake McNamara just talking Clarkson hockey, getting things going, trying to make this a weekly thing. KnightChat, maybe hopefully a little bit later. Getting some players on here. We'll have to kind of work with Clarkson Athletics on that one as well. But we're halfway through the season now, Matt. And I think it's fair to say that both of the teams come out. They've impressed the men's and women's team. We've seen great hockey. We've heard great stories from the teams on the road. But as far as the team goes, you have to go to the women's team and you got to go to the men's team. You got to pick one person off the roster that you have your first half MVP to. And then if you had to pick somebody else and say, come on, I know what you can do. I've seen you play. You had a couple good games here in the first start, but we really need you in the second start. So if you had an MVP and who needs a little kick in the seat of the pants to kind of get them to the second half and really help out their team?
Well, starting on the women's side, a lot of people point to Jamie Lee Rattray, probably Eric Howe as well. But we talked about it earlier. I think my first half MVP for the one side has got to be Vanessa Gagnon. She was excellent throughout the entire first half of that season. You know, we talked about not only all the tangible things she can do for you on the power play, on the penalty kill, on face-offs, but all intangible. She's a leader. She wears the assistant captain's A. I think the team respects her opinion, and, you know, if she's going to get on somebody, they're going to listen. And I think Vanessa Gagnon, some of that senior leadership she brings, plus she's put up some pretty good points. We've seen her every year that she's been here. She's continued to increase in points, looking to probably set some season highs this year. And I think a game that really would show you that is Quinnipiac game that they played at Quinnipiac. Go to play the Bobcats, who had been undefeated at home. And Gagnon had actually been out, don't know with what. Possibly like an apparent head injury after a hit she took into the boards. But Gagnon comes back for that weekend series. And not only does Clarkson go out and sweep, Erica Howe earns the shutout. Vanessa Gagnon gets one of the goals in that game. And she's really, I think, done a really great job of, you know, a lot of players would have a problem saying, no, I'm going to be the second line center, especially when you're as good as Gagnon is. But she's really taken to that role, and she's flourished in it. She's been one of the best players for the Knights all year. And I really think she's a huge part of this team moving forward. If they're going to go deep into the ECAC playoffs and then potentially the NCAA tournament, they're going to need Vanessa Gagnon healthy, and they're going to need her to be playing well.
I would have to agree with you in the aspects that she has been one of the best players for the team, but you can't help but also look to a player on the ice that sees a lot of minutes on the back end. We don't really talk about her that much. She is lighting up the score sheet. I mean, just 3 assists on the season. But Renata Fast has been out there just about every shift. She goes out there with Vanessa Plon. And after her freshman year, we were pretty impressed with her. She's got a skating ability that you usually don't see from most defenders in the league on the women's side, and really gets the feet moving, not afraid to jump up in the offense. We've seen her on the power play unit as well, and she's one that, if continuing to play the way she does, she could possibly be one of the best shutdown defensemen in the league come her senior season. I mean, she's only a sophomore now. She's been in and out of the lineup a little bit here, had some injury issues, but she's one that's been dependable on the blue line. And even when Erin Ambrose has been a little bit streaky here, Renata Fast has played defense. She's played solidly, and is also been able to jump up and really fill in where the team needs her.
And I really think if you wanted to say, boy, who needs a kick in the seat of their pants, could almost go with the entire defensive core for the Knights. They need to provide a little more offense. And I think we've seen Renata Fast has been able to do it. We know Vanessa Plante has been able to do it. And really, Ambrose has been able to do it. And while she had a very hot start to this year, she was on pace for 90-some-odd goals at the beginning of the year. A pace she wasn't going to continue. But you didn't expect to see such a stout drop-off in what Erin Ambrose was going to be able to do. I think she really needs to step up her game a little more offensively. Again, it goes back to the power play. She's the quarterback of that power play. There's no doubt in that. You know, Shane and Matt DeRochers, they've coached everyone up. When we're on the power play, we want it back to that point at Ambrose. So she can do one of two things. She can either shoot it. We know she can really shoot the puck, or she can get it to someone who's in a position to score. And I think she really needs to step up a little bit in her play there. I think she's been really good 5-on-5. She's really worked on her defense game. She's been very solid in her own end. But on that power play, as the quarterback, she needs to do just a little bit more to get that Knights operating at a slightly higher percentage. Because in some of those games against Cornell, against Harvard, against any team in the ECAC, it's always going to be close. If you get on the power play late in the game, you have to capitalize, and that all starts, and it really ends also with Ambrose. But I also do like Renata Fast. I think she's done a lot of good things. And I think that, I guess you'd have to say, let's put the whole Knights D-core on watch to see if they've done great things on the defensive end. Let's see if they can step up a little and add a little more offensive firepower to this Knights squad.
And then, you know, Matt, we'll transition, kind of cover the men. I think we were both in agreement of there's been a pretty clear MVP as far as getting things done when they need done for the Knights team. That's Al McPherson. He's doing great things. Really stepped his senior season. I mean, he was a leading scorer for the Knights at the end of last season. Looking across, though, 3 game winners coming on his stick, and he's got 3 power play goals as well. And really, a guy stays out of the box. He's that second line center. He's quick. He gets his feet moving on the boards. He's a slippery one to hold down. Really keeps the feet moving. Almost you would see like a Claude Giroux do on the boards. Really, just fantastic. Got great stick work. He's got one heck of a wrist shot. And he's been out there a lot with penalty, one that you could argue maybe to get that MVP as well. A guy who doesn't do many things wrong on the ice, and I mean, not as high on the score sheet as you look down. McGinnity with just 1, but he's got 9 assists. I'm sure a lot of them going to McPherson really has been that up man there. But McPherson seeing time on the power play, he sees time on the PK, and really he's a valuable piece that I'm sure the Knights are going to miss when he graduates.
It's certainly hard to replace a player of Al McPherson's talent, and not just and it's again what not only he brings on the ice, but what he does in the locker room. You know, McPherson's cool-headed guy. Can be a leader. We've seen him step up and talk to referees. Certainly one of the assistant captains. Doesn't wear the A on the sweater, but you certainly know he's a guy that's well respected in that locker room. Has been here. He's put in the time. Worked hard. He's really made himself into a really good hockey player. Really came in as a guy that was mostly just a guy that uses his speed. Has really developed a nice bit of strength to his game. He's really hard to take out along the bits you mentioned. We've seen him lots of times against guys that look 3 or 4 inches taller and have, some bulk on him. And he's really able to just shut him off. Sort of a good running back in football. And he can just continue to fight through checks. And he's been a great offensive force for the Knights. We talked about his big-time goals as well. He's been close for this Knights team. Had that game winner against Cornell. Has had 3 game wins this year. He's been very good for the Knights. I definitely look for him to continue to be not the first, the second line center. Going to continue to play on the power play. You could certainly tell Al McPherson's the guy that Casey Jones trusts. He'll put him out in any situation that they have on the ice. Al McPherson's going to step up, and he's going to show up for just about for every game he plays.
Yeah, I know we were going to talk about, some guys we might want to see, stand up this second half of the semester. Let's diverge a little bit. And there's a guy scrolling through here, Kevin Tansey. We didn't see him play last year, of course, medical redshirt with that victim of the assault in Ottawa. He was a guy who was here, in Ottawa, just about an hour away. He came down just about every weekend, supported his team, cheered on from the stands. You could tell it was killing him just being there on the bench pregame and then having to sit there in the stands and kind of watch the Knights fall apart last season, so it seemed. And he's been a guy at home. He seems reinvigorated. He's got this energy that he brings to the whole defensive core and the team, really. We see him out pumped up before every game. We see him, you can almost hear him up in the press box singing the national anthems before the game. He's a guy, he loves playing at home. He loves being in front of the crowd at Cheel. And he wears his emotions out on his sleeve and puts it out on the ice for every shift that he takes. And it's hard to say that he hasn't been one of the key factors in the turnaround from last season to this season.
Well, I think he's been probably, if not one of, he might be the key factor. The Knights defense last year had some problems down the stretch. It seemed like they just got worn out because Casey Jones was rolling, the same 4 or 5 guys pretty continuously. And it really turned out to be a problem there towards the end. You could see some guys really were just towards the ends of games. And I think, what he's been able to do, he's reinvigorated himself, the team. He's going to come and he's going to play as hard as he possibly can. And he's really taken away big minutes from a guy like James Howden, who we saw play quite a bit last year, has still played a good amount of games this year and has gotten some time, but he hasn't been counted. He hasn't been leaned on to play upwards of 20 or some minutes a game, which not only helps him, but it helps everyone else out on the team. When you got fresh legs to go out on the ice, you always got, a guy that's ready on the bench. You don't got a guy that's huffing and puffing for air. I think Kevin Tansey's been really important to the turnaround and the all-around efficiency that the Knights defense has brought about.
And he's been great. The whole decor though has really stood up there. Nick Pockluck, he was a big dude back there. I believe he was 6'5" or 6'6". They brought in Haas. He played well, And this past weekend, we saw a couple defensemen got to rest. We saw Brian Sins come in. He's got a brother who plays at Colgate. And really, he stepped in well. Casey Jones really trusted him. I wonder why he wasn't in there at the beginning of the season, whether it was strength issues or if he just wasn't ready. And really, I think the biggest piece of the Knights team right now that needs a kick, I'd say would be that top line. That line of Frederick, Burton, and Ben Sexton. I mean, they've been playing well. Sexton is the leading scorer, but he's a scorer. He was recruited here to come score goals the Knights, and simply put, he really hasn't done that. He's got a lot of helpers on the season. He's got 13 assists, but only 5 goals. And when you have Ben Sexton on the team, a guy who we've seen him get frustrated, seen some penalties that he doesn't need to take, but he just needs to be putting the puck in the back of the net. And I think when he starts doing that, his game is gonna rocket off. Just from the way we've seen Ben Sexton, usually, of course, in the past few seasons, he's had some injury problems with his knee. His knee last year, his arm, his freshman year. It's like he hasn't been able to put together a full season, knock on wood. He's been healthy, though, this whole season, and he's been doing good things for the Knights. I just think he has a notch to his game that he hasn't really elevated to just yet, and I think Jones is probably going to push him to hit that.
Well, especially as the captain of the team, I think Ben Sexton certainly leading scorer, but you always look for captain to bring that extra little something in the second half of the season. And it's exactly what you're talking about. He needs to be the guy. For we talked about the women's team. Aaron Ambrose needs to step up on the power play. Benson's going to be the quarterback for the men's team on the power play. He's the guy that distributes the puck, and he needs to push not just himself, but that entire unit, entire first line, this entire team. He's the leader of the team. Ben Sexton's got to step up big leadership role and get his guys going, because we've seen when Clarkson's really good, when they're in their game, they're hard to beat. And when they're scoring on the power play, they're darn near impossible to beat. So we know they've got good goaltending. They've got good defense. Ben Sexton, and it's not just Ben Sexton either. It's anyone that's getting those power play minutes. They're going to step up. That whole unit has to step up. It's not, if Ben Sexton elevates the game and no one else does, it's not going to be that effective. That entire team, the entire unit needs to work and get better at the power play, because it's really crucial. You talk about, especially when you look at like the Stanley Cup playoffs, the teams that can, put the puck in the back of the net on the power play, that's usually the team that wins the cup. And that's going to translates right over to hockey in college here. If you can put the puck in the back of the net on the power play, you make teams pay for those opportunities you give them. You're going to have some success. And I think the Knights are certainly set for some success, but they still needs to be that little bit of push, that little bit of drive, so that they can finish out this season strong. They put themselves in a good position at the beginning, the really fast and a good first semester, but they got to continue that into the second semester of play.
Of course, here on KnightChat, WTSC's been so gracious to open the doors for a couple guys from WCKN, able to come over. Of course, going out on YouTube, you can check us out live stream from there. We'll have the show on TV in the next couple days, hopefully, if all things go according to plan. We got Dan Devins back with us, and as we're getting ready to wrap up, can
I just interject here? Yeah, I had to step out a little bit. I just wanted to say another stat that Stin leads the team in is penalty minutes. Actually, he has 22 penalties on the season. That is 5 above the next, who is Alex Boak, which is no surprise there, right? And I think one thing that Sexton really needs to worry about, especially going forward in the second half of the season, is staying out of the penalty box. And, I mean, we talk about how he's not scoring, how he's got a bunch of assists. Maybe he's not scoring as much because he's spending a little too much time in the box. And, I mean, not to put him down at all, but I think that when he's on, he's on. And I think getting penalties in the middle of games just doesn't help him.
Yeah, and I think you can certainly see when we see Ben Sexton playing at the level he can get to, you could see he was a draft pick of the Bruins. He's a great skater. He really controls the puck well, and there's a lot of good things you see in Ben Sexton's game, but there's still some things he needs to polish up. You think we saw him step up this year in terms of face-off wins. He's been huge for the Knights. Has had games upwards of 60, 70%. where he's won faceoffs, one of the best faceoff guys in the country. But you have to get those penalty minutes. You have to go, wow, that's a lot of time for your captain, your best faceoff guy, to be spending in the box. And I think if Ben Sexton can, make half the penalty minutes, you'll see, like Dan's saying, you'll see some more points. You'll see better production out of the entire team. Because Ben Sexton, while he's a scorer, he's also a guy that can he distributes the puck very well. And I think that'll be huge for the Knights, is really as a whole. And we talked about penalty minutes being a problem. If you stay out of the box and you don't give teams chances on the power play and you capitalize on your own chances, you're going to win hockey games. And it's just that plain and simple.
And I think this weekend is definitely going to be an opportunity for the Knights to start to turn that around. Playing great teams like Yale. Sometimes you'll find that that especially the Knights, you're going to reflect the play of the team you're playing. Like this weekend, Merrimack, maybe perhaps not the best performance from both teams, which definitely made frustrating game, resulting in a lot of penalty minutes. As one of the things the Knights definitely need to improve on, but. Definitely looking forward to Yale this week, and maybe we can bring it back, play a little faster, and definitely try to stay out of the box. So,
And as we get ready to kind of wind down, about 4 minutes left for us here at night. We have on our
Have you
show.
guys done the debate yet?
We're getting ready.
Oh my God!
I have
I'm
a
so pumped.
nice debate topic here. Of course, 3 goaltenders we've seen play now at Shield, and we saw Steve Perry. He had a little bit. He came out. He played phenomenal in his first game against Niagara. Had a shutout. Leads the team as far as the goaltenders go with the shutouts. We saw Renola come this weekend against Merrimack. He, for his first game, tracked the puck pretty well, and it was really impressive. And then we saw Greg Lewis kind of drop the ball a little bit there on Saturday. It's been streaky with as well. But if you're Casey Jones and you're going into this EC play coming up, who do you put between the pipes?
Well, that's an easy one. You gotta go with Greg Lewis. I mean, he's going to his second season. It's second half of the season. He has done well this year. I mean, basically, he's been split time with Perry for most of the season. But I think he'll pick it up. Like, I mean, back when Karpowicz was here, like, he had some ups and downs. He had a lot of ups and downs, actually. But he got the playing time. And then he became, his senior year, this great goaltender that we leaned on for most of the year. And I think that the switching on and off every weekend, that's not going to help either one of the goalies. So I think that if Casey can give Lewis more of a shot, I'll do a lot better.
Yeah, and if you look at the stats here, Greg, while he had in 32 goals on the season, if the rest of the team can kind of help him out a little bit, he's got 15 goals that snuck past him on the power play. There's nothing you can do about that when a guy on your team is sitting in the box. I mean, I'm sure Greg Lewis isn't taking these penalties himself. You don't see that in college hockey like you have the possibility to in the NHL with the whole delay of game rule. But with him in the back in the net, he's done well in 5-on-5. I think he plays a little bit farther back in the net than you see a lot of guys. And he's got fundamentals. He doesn't really have that razzle-dazzle that you see guys like Andy come out with, but he plays fundamentally sound. And when he plays fundamentally sound, he makes for some pretty interesting saves.
I would actually have to disagree with Dan and say that we might want to give Perry a little more of a chance there. I think he's performed well when he has been played in the game. He's just a lot of difficult matchups, but he's definitely. Also, I think he knows when to go out of the net. When to ground the crease, stop it when it's coming around the boards, and it's definitely important to not just play in the back of the net. But either way, it's definitely. I'd agree and say that they need to make a decision and end up playing one more than the other, because you're gonna trying to build a guy you want to rely on for at least next year, looking into the future for that. But my vote would have to be for Perry there.
My vote would have to go for Greg Lewis. I just think the experience is really crucial, especially as a goaltender. I feel Lou's been very good. He's had his ups and downs, and I think everyone here, all the goaltenders have had ups and downs. Minus Ville Rinaldo, only played the one game. But I think right now, Lou, with that experience, he's played big game before, And it just seems like to me, and I absolutely agree with you guys as well, it's hard. Goaltenders are creatures of habit. They get zone. When they get in that zone, it's just something that they just play. Not thinking about playing hockey. They're just going out and playing. We've seen it happen with goaltenders in the Stanley Cup playoffs. Tim Thomas for the Bruins had a great Stanley Cup playoff where he was just okay during most of the season, then was unbelievable in the playoffs. Seemed like no one could put it past him.
They won that Stanley Cup there because of Tim Thomas. And because he just played phenomenal in the playoffs.
Yeah, and it holds true with a guy like Jonathan Quick, who helped carry the Kings to the playoffs.
Yeah, you do the exact same thing.
It's when a goaltender gets hot, and especially if you're good and you get hot, you become really hard to beat. And we saw the Tiranen, and I think Greg Lewis right now has the best possibility to carry the team furthest. Nothing against Steve Perry or Ville Runala. I just think Lou paid his dues a lot last year. It was a tough season for the Knights overall. I think it was really tough for Greg Lewis to come in and play a lot of those games. I think we saw him grow a lot last year, and I think if he continues to play well, he can continue to grow. And then I think all those guys are still young. I think right now Lou's the guy to go with because you still then have 2 years with him. I think you got something there if you continue to go with him.
And Greg has been playing. He's been playing great. But it's also comforting if you're on the bench and you know Steve Perry's there as well. If anything does happen to Lou, we were at that game, Matt, at St. Lawrence just before we went home for Christmas break, and Lou let a couple past him in the first period, and Casey gave him the yank. And Perry went in there and he shut out himself for the second half of that game in a pretty raucous Appleton Arena. So it's also comforting to know you have a guy like Perry who, if things happen, has his head on straight, and he can come in. A lot of critics say pulling your goalie, you're guaranteed to let in one more until that the backup comes in, sees a couple of shots. Either they get one past him early, or he's steady as a rock back there. And it seems like when Perry has come in relief, he's been.
Yeah, and I certainly think Steve Perry hasn't looked like he's a freshman in his first season of college hockey. He's looked very calm in the nets. He looks like the stage isn't too big for him, and I think that's something that's really important going on into his future. But right now, I still think Greg Lewis is the guy. I think he brings a lot to the table. I think all three goaltenders bring a lot to the table. But Lou's gotten the time in. He knows what it's like to play the tough ECAC schedule where you're traveling, you're playing teams that are sending 30 shots at you every night. They're getting good opportunities. But it is comforting to know that you got Steve Perry back there, a guy who's come out. He stole that St. Lawrence game because Clarkson was really not in that most of that first period. And then he came out. He shut the door on the Carey brothers, who had really been playing phenomenal up until that point. And it was hard, especially at St. Lawrence, to come in and try to fill in like that. That's difficult. But it's comforting to know he's there. And it's also comforting to know you got another guy in Ville Runala who also can really play excellently. So I think the Knights now know that they've built some depth at forward and defense. Now they know they've got some depth at goaltending. Now it's just time. And whoever it's going to be, I think we can all mutually agree on that they've got to get the lion's share of the starting time. They got to get some back-to-back weekends here.
Definitely.
Get in that zone and on that roll.
I wouldn't be opposed to Runala, right? Yeah, Runala a chance, but I think it's too late in the season to do that. Like, you can't bring a guy in halfway through the season, give him his playing time that he's been sitting there waiting for. I think that's an issue for next year. I mean Ronaldo, he's got to pay his dues, just like anybody else. And I think that having the two goalies there that have really proven themselves this year is definitely going to benefit us in the long run. Even in the playoffs, if we get a home series, we are notorious losing the last game. Notorious. We almost always lose the third game if we make it there. It's either we win the first two or we win one of them and then we lose the last one. So maybe maybe that's something that having that extra goalie there wouldn't be bad for. Like, if you can rely on Perry to be that guy in that last game, or you put Perry in in the second game or maybe the first game of the weekend. That way, you put him in on the first game, he wins. That's awesome. Then you put Lewis in the next game and he wins. That's even better. I mean, if Perry loses the first game, then you have Lewis in the next two. It's a balance that I think Casey's gonna have to do and have to come up with some sort of system to try and get some sort of rhythm going with at least one of the guys going into the remainder of the season.
Well, that's all the time we have here tonight. It's been great. First night of Night Chat for the semester. We should be back next Thursday, same time. We'll be on YouTube again. We'll be here on 91.1 WTSC, and it'll be the crew from CKN going over. But that's about all we have. Anybody else have any last remarks?
No, I think Golden Knights should just come out with 2 big wins this weekend, on both men's and women's, and hopefully we can go up in the ECAC.
And look forward to a good second half of the season.
Yeah, and you know, my buzzword is always momentum, and there's no better time to start it now. And Yale, the national champions, and same on the women's side. 2 road ECAC wins, and you're looking pretty good for the second half of your season. Momentum huge in hockey, and if you start it now, you should be able to carry it through the rest of the season. So, you know, both teams still have that opportunity. They're not really locked into where they are. Both teams have opportunities to catch up with those first place in the ECAC squads.
That's all we got. Thanks for tuning in this week, Night Chat on 91.1 WTSC, The Source.